Welcome to another episode of Excel, Learning the Basics. My name is Jerry Colbert, and in this week's episode, we're going to be learning all about columns and rows. Coming up next. So here we are within Excel for Mac. And in this week's episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about columns and rows and why they are important when creating workbooks or Excel spreadsheets. So as you see here in this workbook that I have opened up here, I have all these empty cells. So I'm fixing to create myself a spreadsheet. But what I need to know is, how do I want to format, or how do I want Excel to come out if I decide to print it, or if I want to view it, or I want to send it to a colleague? How do I want it to look? And what are the things that are important to make it look good? Well, one of the main things that you need to know about how to format your Excel spreadsheet where it looks aesthetically pleasing, but also contains formulas and stuff like that, all has to do with rows and columns. Everything in Excel has to do with rows and columns. Without rows and columns, there is no Excel, to be honest with you, because that's the whole functionality of Excel. Now, if you see here, the little blue box is what I have selected here. And this area right here is A1. Now, if you watched any of my other episodes, you would have saw when I was going over cells about how whenever you're on a cell, and that's where the blue box is, so everywhere I click, that is corresponding to a column and a row. So in other episodes, when I'm talking about a column and a row, I might say C7. Because if you look here in this box here, you see that that cell is in reference to column C7. So we always say the column letter before the row number. That's how we locate anything within Excel. So it's C7 where I'm at right here, and D2, we got G16, and as you see, it's highlighted here and highlighted there, so you know what it is, but also states it right in this box right here. Okay. Now, one thing you can do with columns and rows is maybe you have to type something in here as a header, like say, for instance, maybe you had to type that in, but you're like, well, you know, this column isn't wide enough to handle this because it's overlapping into the next cell. And maybe you want to write something here, right? Well, you're missing the tips part of this productivity. So you're like, well, what do I do? Well, one of the things you can do within rows and columns is you can expand them to fit whatever it is that you are wanting to put there. Now, you can do it a couple ways. Well, actually, quite a few different ways. You can either go up here to where the end of the column letter is here, and you see how it changes that cursor to a kind of like a plus sign with arrows on either side. If you grab it by clicking on the left mouse button and then drag it over, you can widen the cell. Or widen the column, actually. So that is one way that you can widen a column. Another way you can widen a column is, if I was to hover over this right here and just double click, it automatically widens the column to the width of whatever is the longest thing in that column. So for instance, let me go back. Let's say I had something else written here, and then something else written here, and something else. Now, when I double click on this, it's going to widen it to the length of this one because this one is the longest characters in this column. So it's going to automatically widen it to the whatever is the longest width of characters in this column. And this is helpful when you are creating headers to whatever data spreadsheet that you're creating, and you just kind of type it real quickly, and it's like, oh man, it's too long for that column, so you can just double click here and spread that column. Now, another cool thing you can do here is, let me get rid of this, and let me get rid of that. Another thing you can do here is, let's say you were at this stage here, and you wanted to, and you had typed out, let me see. Let me just type a few things in here. You typed out some things here. Learning the Mac, Excel for beginners. All right, so let's say, for instance, you have all this you typed in here. Well, you can also, by highlighting all of these here and double-clicking on just one of the little plus with arrows on either side here, if you do that, it will automatically, for all of the ones that you highlighted here, it will automatically widen the column with the longest name that's in that column, or the longest characters that's in that column width. So as you see, it did it for each one, and it did it for different widths here. This is very useful if you just want to go ahead and type in a column headers here, and you don't want to take time. Oh, I typed this one in, now I got to make sure I widen it. Type this one in, make sure I widen it. You can just type it all in and then highlight it all real quickly, and then just double click on the area, any one of these, and it'll automatically widen it for everything that you have highlighted or selected. Okay? And what I mean by selected is when you click on one of the columns, you can just kind of start dragging over and select all the rest while you're holding down the left mouse button. Another way you can widen the columns is by right-clicking and selecting column width. Now, when you do this and you've selected all of them and you do this, this is very helpful if you want all of your columns to be the same width. This can be useful if you're into aesthetics and you just want everything the same. No matter how long the characters are, everything the same. But my suggestion always is to try to go with a column width that is larger than your current longest character, word, or number sequence that you have in one of the columns. So what I typically like to do here in this situation, if I want them all the same column width, I would pick the column and right click on it, and I would check that column widths, how wide that column width is. And I would say, well, okay, so that's the column width. That's the longest one, I believe. So let's go over here and click on this one. And it is. And sometimes I just guess, to be honest with you. But it looks like that is the longest one. So what I do then is I go ahead and go like this, right click on there, select the column width, and I'll put something like that, and voila. Now, all of the columns are the same width, no matter what. No matter what, all of them are the same width, as you see here. So, these are different ways that you can widen the columns. Another thing you can do within columns here is everything here is left oriented, meaning all the words are gone to the left of that cell. Well, if you highlight all of this and just click right here, which is center the text, you can now center all of them together right here inside each individual cell. As well as when I did this, I went ahead and set up formatting for all of these cells in this column, so the next thing I type in here is now centered. These are the different things that you can do within columns here. Now, I know this episode is called Columns and Rows. Well, everything I just did in this column here, I can also do in rows. And if for some odd reason I need to change the row height, I can do so here. As you see, sometimes you do need to do the row height. Also, the same thing applies with row heights. I can just highlight those, and if I want them all the same height, I can just double click here, and now look at there. It's all made it the height of each character that's in the cell. Let's say, for instance, this one right here is at a bigger character level. So what I do, I double click here, and it's already at the highest level there whenever I enter that character. And let's say this one's here at a different character level. As you see, it goes ahead and automatically does the widening for you. Now, of course, you could always select this and this, hit the row height, and say you want it at 3 inches. And there you go. So now you've created yourself a higher rows, depending on what you are looking for as far as your spreadsheet on what you're trying to accomplish with it. Now, this is going to become very useful in later episodes when we start talking about creating a spreadsheet for either yourself or for work, for budget, or whatever it is that you're trying to do, and you want to create it where it's aesthetically pleasing, but also contains the data that you need for your formulas for calculating whatever it is you're trying to calculate. Now, of course, some people, it doesn't really matter. If they're just creating themselves a simple budget for at home, they don't really worry too much about the aesthetics of it. Then other people are very OCD and need it to look really pretty. But in a business environment, you'd want it to look professional, and also so therefore other co-workers can follow along because it looks professional and it looks aesthetically pleasing. So this is some of the things you can do within columns and rows. When you click on a row here, you can also cut a row and paste it, or insert cut cells. But if you wanted to paste it, you could do this, paste it there, and now one that contained all of that data is got nothing in it because you cut and pasted it to the cell 2. You can also do individual cut and paste in individual cells, which we went over in another episode. You can also, when you right click on the actual cell number itself, you can also copy it and insert that copied cell right here, which is a little bit different than actual pasting. So if you insert copied cell, it will insert it there. So these are the different things you can do. You can also do the same thing when you actually right click on a column letter. You can also do the same thing. Another thing you can do is hide a column. Sometimes that's very useful if you create a formulas that's going off of a certain cell or column that you do not want other people to see. You can hide it and then protect the workbook so nobody can open it up and see the data and change the data if for some reason you want to protect that area. So these are some of the different things that you can do within Excel. Most of this stuff that I just showed you will also work in the PC environment. So again, like I say, if you ever need to create anything in cells, it always has to do with columns and rows. So if you like this video, please click on the like button. And if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And so without further ado, I want to wish you all an awesome day, and let's become more productive. Thank you.